Okay, so I've created this beautiful UI in Piskel, and we're going to add this into our Unreal scene as a very simple UI with just some key presses for the user to use. Actually, I didn't include any real instructions about how to actually play the game, so maybe I can just put in our actual commands, W, A, S, D, walk, and let's draw a little mouse, look, I guess, and space. That's a pretty bad space bar. Space, jump. And I don't know if I can do anything else. Maybe I can run. I'm not really sure. I don't remember. Anyway, okay, that's a little bit better. We've got some actual movement instructions. So let's export that again. And so I've just got this UI sort of splash screen image. So I'll call this splash screen. And this just gives the user just some really basic information about how to control the game. So we're going to put this in our content folder, and I'll put a new folder in here for UI, and then just throw this in here. So this is inside my Unreal project in my project folder. So when I drop that in there, I get this little Unreal notification asking me if I want to import this, and I do. So I'm just going to click import. So that's a little bit different than what we did last time, where we imported using the import button, but we can see if that works. So now we have this UI folder, and we have this little splash image here. I'm going to increase the thumbnail size a little bit. Okay, so what we want to do is add that into the scene, and to do that, we have to make in Unreal our version of like the control node or the UI node that we have in Godot. In Unreal, we can add what's called a widget, and then we can throw a canvas into the widget and display images on there. And what we're going to see is that it looks really, really similar to how it looks in Godot. So I hope that is a good example of how all these game engines kind of use the same basic concepts. The way they set things up looks a little bit different, and it may emphasize certain things over others. But a lot of the basic ideas are the same. So when you learn how something works in Godot, it gives you a little bit of, you'll see very similar things in Unreal and other game engines. But anyway, let's create our little widget. So I'm going to right click on here, and I'm going to create a widget. So I'm going to go to user interface, and I'm going to choose this widget blueprint. So this is going to create a little widget, and then blueprint is what Unreal uses to kind of refer to classes, basically, like different objects. So Godot doesn't really have the same thing. Godot organizes everything as scenes, but a blueprint is sort of like a scene that we add into other stuff, but we can also add visual code into the blueprint. So it kind of does multiple things. So let's add in this widget blueprint. You can also find that by typing in to this search bar widget, and you'll see kind of a few different things. So we want this widget blueprint, and we're going to call this our splash screen. And we need to remember the name of this because we're going to have to load it at one point, but we should be able to remember that. So if we want to edit this, we can double click, and it's going to open this scene that kind of looks similar to our 2D area in Godot. And you can see that we have a very similar sort of thing where we have different nodes that we can add. See how we have like buttons, images, all sorts of stuff. And then we have input. We have lots of different things in here that we can add into this section. So we need to add a canvas. So we're going to add a little canvas panel, and we're going to drag this down here to our hierarchy. So there's our canvas panel, and here's our splash screen. So again, it looks very similar to Godot. Things are sort of in a slightly different, orientation on the screen, but it has a lot of the same types of elements. So we have this little canvas panel. Let's click on this. And so you're going to notice over here, the details is kind of like the inspector. And it's got some similar properties. So if we look at our panel here, we can, let me move it over a little bit. So we can see kind of like how much space it's going to take up. And we can change certain things, like the pivot is where it kind of rotates from. We can add a tooltip. We can do a bunch of stuff, but what I'm looking for is the screen orientation. So let's look under here. Where is it? I don't think I can see the whole. Okay, there we go. I can't see the whole thing. Okay, let's see if we can find it here. Oops. Okay. Okay. So let's leave this here. We'll add a few more things. So I'm using the right mouse button to rotate, to pan, and then I'm using the scroll wheel to zoom around. And so let's add some stuff in here. So let's add in an image. So we can find image and throw this in here, and we can add in our UI image. So you can see now with this image, we have some things, some layout stuff that also looks kind of similar to what we have in Godot, but a little bit different. So this layout grid kind of looks similar to what we have in Godot. I just want to center the image. So with the anchor, I'm just going to click on the center button right here. You might think that we want to make the image as big as the screen, but we don't know what size the screen is going to be. So we just want to center the image. So I'm going to center the image. And then we just have to load our image in here. So let's go to our content drawer and go to our UI. And then we're going to try to drag the image over here. Can we do that? Oh, this adds the image by itself. Okay, so let's delete this other image we created. And so let's use this image and let's center it. And we're going to set the position to 0 and 0, so it'll be centered. And it looks really small. I think that's just because the screen resolution is really high. Let's see if we can zoom in. Okay, it might be too small. We might have to, oh, you know what? The size for some reason is set to 40. Let's set the size Y to 100. And let's say size to content. It still looks kind of weird. We might have to export it at a larger size, but we can go back and do that if we want to. But this might look okay. Let's see. Or maybe I want to put the actual original size in here. I'll put 1280 by 720. Okay, that looks better. And then, why is my position? Try centering it again. Oh, I think the position actually should be 0.5, maybe? No. Maybe it should be half of 1280. Let's try 1280 divided by 2. Nope. Or maybe negative. There we go. Okay. And negative 720 divided by 2. Okay, that's starting to look pretty good. It's a little bit different than Godot, but it's starting to look like what we want. And then let's put just a little background behind here. So let's see if we can find like a background. We don't want to blur. Let's see. Maybe we can find just a texture. No. What do we want? A color, maybe? Let's see if we can find... maybe it's common. Border, image, text. I forget the name. Maybe we just need an image with a color? I feel like there should be... Okay, let's see if we just throw an image in there. Maybe we can add a color on top of it. Okay, there we go. Oh, whoops. I did that to the wrong image. Okay, let's put this image 110 up here. And let's rename this background. And let's rename this image splash UI. And then with our background, let's set this to take up the whole area. And we'll make this black. And we'll set the alpha to 1. Maybe we need to do this. Okay. It doesn't really seem like it likes that. There's got to be a way to... Oh no, we don't want that. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. Let's get out of here. Okay, there's our background, but it's not the right size. Let's try this again. Okay. It's not working exactly the way I was hoping, but that's okay. We've got most of what we want. We can fix the background later. So we've got this little image here. It gives the user some instructions. We're going to compile this, which basically just runs it through the Unreal Engine and make sure everything works. And then we're going to add a little script that will launch this when we start the game. So we're going to add a couple little scripts. One we're going to add to the beginning of the game, and then one we'll add to the player. So to add this script, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our world blueprints. So these are all the little pieces of code that are associated with our level or our scene. And we're going to go to the open level blueprint. And this is what coding sort of looks like in Unreal. We use these things called blueprints, and it uses visual coding. So it's a little bit different than Godot. And it's supposed to be a little bit more sort of like user-friendly. It's a little bit easier to get started because you don't have to deal with syntax errors and, missing semicolons and stuff like that. So we're just going to create a really, really simple script here that is going to launch our splash scene. So you can see in here I can use the right mouse button to kind of pan around. And then if I right click, I can add a new node. And it has some kind of default nodes here. I can get rid of these little default nodes if I want. I don't want this one, so I can just delete it. Or I can delete that one. And then we can start to add our own nodes. So if we right click and we start, I wrote down this, we want something called begin play. So this is just an event. This is kind of like the ready function in Godot. It just is going to launch once at the beginning of our level. And so what we want to do is we're going to add our splash screen. We're going to add a little widget here. So when you connect this event to a node, you can drag this out And then if there's nothing there, it'll just open up this little drop down. Or you can add something and then connect them. So if we drag this out and get a little drop down, we're going to say create a splash. So one issue with Unreal is that each engine is very different, and sometimes they don't have the same names for things, which is why I can't find everything that I'm looking for. We might have to come back to this. Let's see. Okay, maybe we can just get the widget. Okay, add widget component. So we might have to Okay, so yeah, these are slightly different. Oh, here we go, create widget. Okay, so we're gonna create a widget, and then we're gonna look for our splash screen. So there it is. Okay, so we've got create widget. We're gonna add our splash screen in here. So it's not gonna be there. Once you create the splash screen, it should show up in this dropdown. It's not a default component, so you need to create it first. But once we created that splash screen widget, it should show up in this little dropdown here. So then we create the widget, and then we add it to the viewport. So I can then drag out this little guy and say add to viewport. Okay, this one exists, that's nice. And then we have to, so this is gonna be good, but we also have to connect this little return value. This returns our little class right here. And we just have to throw this into this little function here. Okay, so the end result of all of that, hopefully, will be that when we run our game, we'll see that splash screen first. So I'm gonna compile this and save it, and then close this window. And we're gonna run this. And there we go. There's our really goofy UI. We can see the game behind it, but maybe that's not the end of the world. And we can kind of control the game. So it's not exactly what we want, but it's good enough to get started. Okay, so we've got our splash screen. Now what we need to do is get rid of the splash screen. And we need to give the player the rest of the controls that we looked at. So to do this, we're gonna do something similar to what we did in Godot. We have to add some key press events. So we did this in the input map in Godot. In Unreal, we're gonna do this by going to Edit and Project Settings. So just like we have our project settings in Godot, we have them in Unreal. And under Engine, there's a setting for Input. And so if you look in here, you can see I already created this example. I'll recreate this just so we can see how I did it. But this is basically Unreal's version of our input map in Godot. So we have these things called action mappings, and it's really, really similar to how Godot is set up. So I'm gonna delete this quit button that I created, and I'll recreate it. So to add an action mapping, you just click on this plus button, and you give it a name, just like we do in Godot. So I'm gonna create a quit button, and then we just assign inputs to it. So we can choose a keyboard, and then I have to hit the keyboard, and then I can hit, I can choose the key value. So I'm gonna type in Q, and I'm gonna go to keyboard Q, and there we go. And if I wanna add escape at the same time, I could do that. Some people might use escape as kind of their, you know, what they expect to quit the game. So you can map multiple keys if you want. Okay, so let's add another action mapping. We're gonna call this start game. And we're gonna add a keyboard press here. So I'm just gonna type in enter and choose enter. And we'll add one more, which is restart game. Okay, so for this key, I'm going to use R. And there's a lot of things with R, so we just have to find keyboard R. And so that looks good. We're going to save that, and we're going to get out of project settings. And so for these input related things, I'm going to add this code to the player. There's a couple reasons for that. One is that the player object that's in Unreal controls all the input. So if we wanted to add input somewhere else, we'd have to get the input from the player, which is like a whole extra process that we don't want to go into right now. The other thing is if we use this player blueprint in other levels, then this new code will automatically come with it. So that will be useful. So I'm going to click on the player, and the player has its own little blueprint. If we click on this, we're going to create a new copy of the player where we can add the blueprint. But rather than do that, I want to just edit the original blueprint for the player. So I'm not going to click on the player here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the content drawer and go to first person and go to blueprints. And you can see here, the game mode blueprint is the one that we want to edit. This is what controls all the input for the player in the game. So if we double click, we can open this and we can go to the blueprint editor. Let's see. There should be some code in here already. Let's close out of here. And let's see. Let's make sure we clicked on the right thing. Okay, so we have the first-person character, first-person game mode, and first-person controller. Okay, this is the first-person controller. And this is signs input mapping. Okay. That's good, but that's not what we want either. Huh, okay. Let's see. Okay, let's get out of here. Is it in here? Oh yeah, okay, so this is where I added when I was testing. Okay, so this is actually the first person character. I thought this should be in the game mode, but I guess the game mode is, there's no code in here, so never mind that. Ignore what I said before. We need to edit the BP first person character. So this is the blueprint for the first person. You can see the example that I added here. And so we're basically just going to recreate this. So I'll, go over this part, and then we're going to add a couple other parts. So you can see this is setting up the quit button action. So when we press the quit button, we quit the game. This is sort of a baked in action, so this is easy to create. So let's go over how to create this. We'll just recreate it right here. So we're just going to right click, and we're going to look for quit button. So all of the actions that we created will come up under action events. And so we have this action event. We're inside our first person character, so we can see this is the code that handles the movement input, the camera input, and the jump input. So we're creating our own little bits of input, but we're adding it to this class. So when we press the input action, we want to quit the game. So there's a little game function called quit game, and if we connect that there, that'll just do that. So that's kind of like our nodes in Godot, but all of this stuff is put together in the Unreal blueprints. Okay, so we recreated that. Let's get rid of this now. Okay, so we have two other actions that we need to create. One is getting rid of our UI, and the other is restarting the game. So let's add in our restart. There's our restart action event. So if we restart the game, there's a few different ways to do this, but the simplest one that I found is using this node called get current level name and then open level. So if we drag this out and we go to get current level name, we will get the name of the level, And then we can take this level name and we can load the level. And so this is just going to reload the level. So we'll load level instance by name. So it's not going to remember anything about what happened. We're just basically restarting the level. This is just an easy way to give players a way to reset the game if they need to, which they may need to if our game is not working super well. And so we've connected this series of events, but we also have to connect the data. So this little pink value here is going to be the name of the current level. We're going to slot that into level name. Okay, so there we go. We've got that set up. So now we just need to get rid of our UI. And so we can go back to, whoops. I closed everything by mistake. Okay, I want to open up my level blueprint and have this open here so we can compare. But then let's open my first person blueprint again. Okay, so now we have another action. So let's zoom in a little bit and right click. And this time we're looking for start game. So there's our action. And this time what we want to do is we want to get that widget. So just like we constructed the widget before, we're going to reference our widget. So we're going to look for widgets. So we're going to get all widgets of class. And then we're going to select our, what did we call it? Splash screen. So we'll get the splash screen widget. And then there's a function we can use called remove from parent, which will get rid of our widget from the screen. So we're going to drag this guy out. And we're going to look for remove from parent. And then we have to take our found widgets and then add this to this little target here. So the nice thing about coding visually is that you can kind of like look for these components and then put them together, and you don't have to worry about, the exact syntax or the organization of the code. The thing that's a little annoying is you have to know where stuff is, and you have to kind of remember what all the function names are. But that would be true with any code. Anyway, let's compile this. If we get a green check mark, that's good. We'll save it. And let's get out of here. And hopefully all this runs. Okay, so now if we hit enter, we get rid of our UI. And then if we hit R, we restart the game. Okay, so we see the UI again. If you wanted to not see the UI again, you could, write some extra code for that, but we're gonna ignore that for now. I'm gonna hit enter again to start over. And there we go, there's our moose. And so if we hit R, it looks like R is just loading our, oh, you know what? I think I forgot a piece of the code. Hold on just a second. Let's go back to our first person character. Okay. No, we put that in. Okay. Okay, so we did that. Weird. Okay, I'll have to debug that. This might work slightly differently than how I was testing it. But that should work. So I'll debug that later, but for now, let's test our quit button. Okay, so we can start the game and we can quit. Okay. So let's see, if I hit enter, that gets rid of the UI. And I can't like fall off the map right now because of the way I've designed this level. But if I hit R, so it's reloading the game, but the player is not resetting. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, I'll have to debug that later. We might be able to try a different function. Let's see, load level. Reload. No, okay. I'll have to debug that later. I think this should be working, but I'll check why it's not working exactly the way we want. Anyway, that's the basic idea. It doesn't look great, but at least we have some sort of instructions and some way for people to quit the game and restart the game if they need to. So we'll fix that script and go over it later, but for now, we're going to stop here.